This is Pod Populi, podcast for the people.
Welcome aboard the Max Afterburner podcast, sponsored, powered, brought to you by the No Fallen Heroes Foundation Universe Network. Man, it has been a hot minute. I've been, pitbulling, man, Mr. Worldwide. Been out in Colorado a couple times. Dropped our boy Jack off at CU Boulder. Go Buffs. Love what Dion's doing out there. Back out to Colorado to support the Aspen Flight Academy. It's a great nonprofit, putting the ladder down to help underprivileged kids pursue their dreams of aviation. It was great because I got to take the No Fallen Heroes Foundation fighter jet into the event. When I landed, the speaker at the event was an old Blue Angel man, John Foley, call sign Gucci. And when I had just entered the fleet as a brand new aviator, a naval aviator, Gucci was on the Blues. And this guy was larger than life to me. And this was back, he was on the team when the wall fell down. And in 1991, the Blue Angels actually went to Moscow. It's absolutely incredible to me today to say that. And, Gucci said this in Aspen, like, I can't believe where we are right now. He's like, the wall fell. We went to Moscow as the Blue Angels, and the people were great. I just can't believe the world is where it is. That's a separate topic. But anyway, I landed in Aspen, threw Gucci in the back seat. So we actually, Gucci and I got to go out and bend the jet around. And then we had a great time at the Aspen Flight Academy. And then back to Colorado for Parents Weekend with my boy Jack. So my apologies that I've been out of pocket for a little bit, but my beautiful bride Susie has filled in for me on a couple podcasts. Make sure you go back and watch or listen to those. Listen to them if you're stuck in traffic or working out, or make sure you watch them on the No Fallen Heroes YouTube channel. But man, I have a very special virtual guest. Chad, my brother, how are you, man? Great to see you.
I'm good, sir. It's great to see you as well.
I was hoping you wore our colors and then I wore one of yours, so we got some mutual support going on. So
absolutely,
Chad is a close, and his beautiful bride Carrie, very close personal friends. I'm gonna introduce Chad here, and we're gonna take a deep dive. He's just an incredible human being. He's the founder of Mental Joe. So on the vast majority of my podcast, folks, you see me wearing his products. They're absolutely fantastic. I had a tough choice in my closet. I had the mushroom one with the parachuting mushrooms. I was going to go Maverick Mine but I'm like, he'll probably wear that. So I had a ton of Mental Joe's products that I was going to choose from. But this one really, resonates with me. Conquer the battle within, and we're gonna talk about that in a little bit. Chad is on a mission to reshape mental health. Conversations for vets, first responders, and anyone in need, which is pretty special. After his career as an Army Ranger was cut short due to a severe injury topped with childhood traumas, Chad faced years of struggle with pain and mental health, ultimately finding healing through ketamine-assisted therapy. Inspired by vision during therapy, Chad created Mental Joe, a nonprofit using bold apparel to spark conversations about mental health and alternative healing. Alongside his wife, he connects people to resources nationwide to help them conquer the battle within, hence the shirt that I'm wearing, and leads by example to break the cycle for his two young boys that push him every day to be just that 1% better. Bro, it is great to see you. Thanks for everything you're doing, man. Let's just start from the beginning. Like I'm sure you've heard, I had my childhood traumas. It seems like a lot of our sisters and brothers that go in the military have some pretty tough childhood experiences, and then if that's not traumatic enough, we add to it with our military experience. So talk us through some of that childhood stuff. How'd you end up as an Army Ranger? And then we'll take that journey over to Mental Joe and what you're doing today to put the ladder down and help heal our heroes.
Yeah, no, I love it and I appreciate it. And so childhood, I was middle child out of an older brother and a younger sister. And, my parents divorced real early when I was, around 7 or 8, years old. And my dad, he's an abusive alcoholic. And sadly today, I still kind of battles that. And me being a wild little child, that rode the fence quite a bit, I was kind of the one that would say, go kick rocks. I just didn't put up with the bullshit. So ensues the backhand and everything else that comes, with that, sadly. And, we lived in Billings, Montana. We lived in a town that was, 70, 80,000 people. So relatively pretty small. So, if you knew somebody, you knew somebody.
Yeah.
And, just through that was just kind of the fun, goofy kid in high school that dressed up, wasn't the star quarterback or the star athlete or anything like that. But always, and we'll talk more about this as we go, but I always, now that I've sitting on this place of more clarity and the ability to zoom out, I won homecoming king. And to then, big deal, right? It wasn't, I didn't think much about it, but now that I can zoom out and realize I had 20 years of trying to be this individual of, very angry at the bar scene, and figured if I was in bar fights and did all that, people would leave me alone. And that's how I led as a man. If I could be that alpha man, I'm going to do that through bar fighting. Well, zooming out and realizing that I wasn't this star athlete or the star quarterback or what have you. And winning homecoming king, I slowly realized, like, hey, people like me for me. They didn't like me because of all this other garbage that I had going on. And so as we go through that, cap and gown's not even on the ground, and I'm off to Fort Benning, Georgia, which is the home of the infantry. And again, I know there's a bunch of new names to bases and stuff. Where I was at is in Fort Lewis. Now it's Fort Lewis McChord and all that jazz, right? But so went into basic training just as a regular infantry grunt. Ran through that, and halfway through basic ended up getting an airborne slot. So got that awarded to me, went through airborne school, and same thing halfway through that. The 75th Ranger Regiment liaison came down, and I was kind of like, okay, well, this is the path to it, because I just, I wasn't smart enough on the ASVAB, I was saying, just check the box and moved on, So went down and passed RIP, which is Ranger Indoctrination Program. It's, I think now it's 8 to 10 weeks. It's called RASP. Back then it was RIP, and it was anywhere, I think it was 4 to 6 weeks. So about a month and a half of just pure hell to get into the Ranger Battalion. Passed that, went out and joined the 2nd Ranger Battalion out in Fort Lewis, Washington. And through that was a Gustav gunner, which is a 84 millimeter cordless rifle. And then through that was getting ready to transition over to sniper section. But kind of where the story takes the turn for me is we did a night jump into Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, and it was a full battalion jump. And through that process, I ended up burning in on that jump. And I don't know, again, I've always said, I don't know if it was 100 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet. I have no idea where I burnt in. I just remember everything was black. And through that, as trying to be an operator and still hang out with a bunch of alpha males, right? The automatic, hey man, I need some pain pills. My back's a wreck. I don't know what I did to my back. And, I'm popping pain pills, and before you know it, now I'm drinking way too damn much in the barracks, and life is just spiraling. Still being able to operate, but hiding all this stuff behind closed doors.
You're taught to compartmentalize. You gotta press forward with the mission, and it's the whole culture of, hey, I gotta hack it, man. If I can't hack it, these guys are gonna give me shit, and the mission's gonna fail.
Absolutely. So ensues the drinking, let's keep popping pain pills, and before you know it, now I'm fighting in the barracks. And I go to the PX, and I was high as a kite. Go to the PX, and back then, there's those little cards that you could buy from the PX, so you could get on that payphone to call folks with the little code. And I ended up pocketing 3 or 4 of those cards because I was broke. All my money was going to pain pills and alcohol, and I was like, I need to call my mom. I don't know where I'm going. I'm spiraling. So I ended up getting caught stealing frickin' phone cards from the PX. And man, as you can imagine, the MPs just said, bro, we're not even going to hammer you, because what your dudes are about to do to you at Ranger Battalion is a whole new world of hate that you're not going to want to ensue.
Oh, Jesus.
And so I go back to battalion, and I'm there, and I'm getting dropped off the MPs, and my entire squad's outside just waiting for me.
Oh, Jesus.
And I'm like, shit, this is going to be rough. So there we go. I get plugged in. I was a specialist. I got promoted at Ranger Battalion. Wasn't a shitbag, but just things unraveled, and before you know it, here I am. I'm getting demoted, and for about a month and a half, I think it was like Ranger school times 10, because they just put me through the works.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I ended up getting booted out of battalion, and just went and was a regular infantry grunt down the road. And at that time, I just that was my hopes and dreams. I wanted to be a tip of the spear guy.
Mm.
It's really what I wanted to do. And when I went down and became a regular infantry dude, I thought it was over. I thought my entire career was over. And so from there, ended up getting, out of the military about a year later and just kind of threw my hands up and didn't know what to do. So I went back home to Billings, Montana. And before you know it, I say good old Montana boys, there's a couple of good things we're good at. It's drinking beer and fighting. So, I go back to Montana and it's just a full-fledged shit show
Mm.
where it's just popping pills, drinking and bar fighting. And so that's kind of the 10,000 foot version from a child real quick into, military and where we're kind of starting the new story in chapters.
It's incredible, bro, because it's your story and it's unique, but we can almost copy and paste for a lot of other guys and gals, for that matter. The childhood trauma to an injury or to something on active duty to pills in the bottle. Plus, it's that culture too, man. Fighter aviation, Rangers, Marine Corps. I don't care the branch. It's this culture of drinking, and tonight we drink, tomorrow we die.
Yes.
So you get home, kind of skidding along the treetops there. The transition. Talk about that transition out of the military back to civilian life. I know you just hit on it, but talk us through some of the lows and kind of how you navigated, or if or when the medicine called to you.
Yeah, I mean, the navigation was rough, and it was rougher, I would say, a good 20 years. Again, now that I can zoom out, right, and look at things from a different context, it was a regular shit show for 20 years. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many bar fights I was in and how many relationships I jacked up on that 20 years, but the transition was nothing. It was, here's your duffel bag. I had to pay for my flight back to Montana, so it's like, here's your duffel bag. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah.
Move on your way. And I go back to Montana, I've got some money in the bank now. But other than that, it's like, what do I do?
Yeah.
I had no idea what to do. Do I go to college? Do I get a job? I was lost. So again, went into college, and then from there, started my own insurance business with Allstate Insurance. And so that's kind of what hunkered me down to Billings. And so same thing, just sat there for years and drank and fought. And then eventually I was like, something's got to change.
Yeah.
So I moved down to Phoenix and then started a life down here where I was in corporate real estate for almost 20 years. And you having some real estate background and knowledge on that, how kind of a shit show and high paced and stress that is.
Yeah, no consistency. It's the unknown, man. It's always month to month, just living on the edge.
Yep. And so if we just fast forward through all that kind of garb, because I really kind of hate talking about that stuff now, because it's like, no, now I want to talk about the ceilings that I'm trying to break and the betterment of who Chad is. And so really fast forwarding 4.5 years ago, I almost took my life. And that was standing in front of Carrie with the Springfield to the head and tension on the trigger and just staring at her. And and there was a pause moment there, and I can reflect on that night now that I don't think if there's a pause moment, I think I'm not here.
Yeah.
I think I was really in a space of go ahead and say something and watch what happens. And so Carrie ended up calling the sheriffs, and they all came out. And weirdly enough, I was wearing my 2nd Ranger Battalion shirt, and the guys that showed up, I'm sitting on the back of my pickup, and guns in the safe. It's it's unloaded now. Things are right. The bullet's still sitting here in front of me as a reminder. And these guys come up, and 2 out of the 5 sheriffs were in Ranger Battalion.
No way. Oh, wow.
And so they're like, dude, what do you need help with? It wasn't, they just kind of knew. They're just like, fuck, man, how do we assist?
How do we help?
And I was like, that time it's like, I don't know, I'm broken. I don't know what's going on with my head. There's no way people think this way. I can't shut it off. It's a constant go and a constant you suck. And it's a constant just demoralizing thought process. So then I go in the cuckoo bin for a week. They inpatient me. I'm in there, and I go in the cuckoo bin for a week. And through that process and the ability to call Carrie, I just told her something's got to change. I was like, I can't live like this. I don't understand it. I'm tired of the traditional ways of healing. Here's your peels here. Let's talk about it. I was like, something has to change. And so through, different podcasts and Carrie research and different things out there, we found ketamine. And And through that, ketamine was kind of my catalyst into this plant medicine space. It was what opened the door. And again, prior to that, right, I was a dare kid from Montana, and
drugs are bad. Yeah.
Yeah, drugs are bad, and now I'm one of the biggest psychedelic and cannabis advocates you can imagine. I yell it from the rooftops, Well,
and of course, because they're not drugs, right? Plants that God puts on this planet for us to heal are just simply not drugs. Okay, so talk. It's interesting because my experience, but for any new folks, I went to took the helicopter to the top of the mountain, starting with Ibogaine, right? And when I had gotten back from Ibogaine, and talked to people about that, they're like, oh yeah, I do psychedelics, I do ayahuasca, and I'm going to go for my 30th sit, and my face melted. I'm like 30, because I'm associating Ibogaine with an ayahuasca experience. So I also heard when I had gotten back, people are like, "Oh, ketamine, it's a good stabilizer. It's a good stop a sucking chest wound. Like if a vet or a first responder or a family member is suicidal, get him some ketamine." But I got to be honest, I was like, that sounds like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Get them this if they're suicidal? That sounds dumb. Again, big ignorance on various medicines. So I had done ketamine, I don't know, with Zappy out in California at his retreat center, and I got it. I left that retreat and said, oh my God, they were right. It's a great stabilizer. I mean, it was a 45-minute, whatever it was, but it was enough how I could see that it could be nice. So since we don't, we talk a little bit about ketamine on the Max Afterburner podcast. Give us your brief on that medicine.
Yeah, I love it. And just for that point that you said, I think it's a really good stabilizer. I think it's good for an entry point, right, to this space.
A bridge. A
bridge. Absolutely. And the reason I like it too is it's one of those medicines where if you're on a bunch of gear, a bunch of SSRIs, painkillers, things of that nature, you can still go do ketamine. As you guys know, running your retreats, when people come in, they've got to be clean. They got to be off the gear. Their diet's got to be tight. And that's really hard to do for a lot of veterans, first responders, and our average Joes.
Correct.
And so that's why I'm such a proponent of ketamine, because I feel if we can get more people to that ketamine table and ketamine is held in that right space, now you got a whole other, band of armies and brothers and sisters that really are understanding this. And then it opens that door to, the true plant medicines of this stuff.
I think that's fantastic, man. It's some great prep work. And I love the way you said that because, either with psilocybin or some of the ibogaine or even iboga, you're right. You got to stair step down off of your stuff, which can present its own problems, right? So anybody listening, first of all, the places we go have medical doctors and nurses that'll don't try and step yourself down off of anything or don't change anything. But Chad's bringing up a great point that with ketamine, you can kind of have some of these outlying kind of issues and still start to heal. And then maybe when you get to the other end of the ketamine bridge, it'll be easier for it to maybe stair step stuff down and prepare for some psilocybin or ayahuasca or ibogaine. So that was the ketamine really helped you. It was transformative.
Yeah, it was. And that's beautiful the way you said that. I mean, that's kind of what I used ketamine for. And sadly, we'll talk about the differences, but I went through about 6 different clinics here in the Phoenix Valley. And I didn't know why at the time, but now I get it. I was kind of being a guinea pig, and I don't want to ever say I'm a source of truth, but I've done enough ketamine to say, hey, these are the things that should be included in that.
Oh, good. Okay.
But I was on 150 milligrams of Effexor when I started ketamine, which is twice the therapeutic dose.
Wow.
And so I was completely numbed out. And to what you said about stair stepping it down, I went from $150, 150 milligrams of Effexor down to 75. And I did that on my own. I did it with no doctors. Okay. With the ketamine, I was able to tell Carrie, hey, I think it's time to move to the next step of these.
Good for you.
I just need you to understand it's probably going to be rough. And it was. From that $150 to that 75, there was about a month where I could barely get out of the house or even get out of bed. My body hurt so bad that I didn't know. I was like, shit, I think I need to go back on this stuff at a higher dosage because it hurt.
Wow.
But again, right? You know it. there was that little voice inside that said, kept pushing. You're there. Like, keep going.
Yeah, you got
this. So next thing you know, I'm at the 75.
Nice.
And now I'm doing 75. Next thing you know, I'm like, okay, I think I can go down to 37. And so once I got to the 37.5, I was really at a place where I felt my foundation was pretty strong mentally, where I could now start handling things in a different manner. And then that's when I seeked out a psilocybin ceremony. And went through that. And same thing, it was weird, right? Because you have this SSRI that's still a little bit in your system, and then you've got this mushroom, and they're both trying to fight each other. And, I'm taking, I think it was almost 8 grams, what I took just to kind of supersede the SSRI.
To nuke it.
And yeah, had to nuke it. And what was crazy about it is, I was expecting to see demons and all this crazy stuff that everyone talks about.
Yeah.
And I was laying there, with the eye guards on and just kind of like, okay, I'm waiting. And just every once in a while, I'd get this white pill bottle that would come in, dump out, and then it would fade away.
Oh my God.
And again, being a knucklehead, I was like, well, that's kind of fucking lame. I want dragons. I want to see some shit. And that was really it. That's
I want some dragons. I'm ready to slay some demons here.
That's it. Yeah. I wanted to go deep and just, next morning had a cup of coffee with my facilitator, and we're sitting there, and I told him, like, yeah, this was it. That's all I saw. I just saw that. He goes, that's it. He goes, dude, that's huge. Medicine is telling you we're done. You don't need the pills anymore.
Wow.
And then it was kind of the light switch came on.
Exactly.
Like, I get it. I don't need to see. It's giving me what I need to see.
Correct.
Right.
You got exactly what you needed. You wanted dragons or fighting demons, but you got what you needed. You didn't get what you wanted.
Correct. Absolutely. So that morning I went home and I flushed all the extra pain pills I had hidden. I flushed all the extra Venaflex and Effexor and everything else that was sitting around. And same thing, I keep that pill bottle here just staring at me as kind of a nice reminder of where it was and where I've gone.
Wow. And
so through that process, roughly I always say about that 7th or 8th ketamine session, I kind of had that aha moment to create Mental Joe. And again, vision, whatever we want to call it, right, came to me of like, let's create an apparel company that really talks about mental health, but it also talks about it on that non-traditional sense, or the breakthrough therapies that we use to kind of have that softer language for people that are on the fence that don't kind of understand this stuff.
Amen. Well, and it's interesting you say that, because you know the history of a lot of these medicines as well as I do, but for some of the folks out there, 60s, 70s, Uncle Sam going to these young men saying, hey, here's a rifle, go kill the yellow man on the other side of the planet. And these young men going, no, I love that yellow man. Well, what are you doing to love another human while you take these things? All right, well, now they're illegal and that's a crime, and here's your rifle and go kill people. So that, and we can talk about, put it in the water and the whole, Kevin O'Leary, or Timothy O'Leary and those guys. I love me some hippies, but maybe this time around, this psychedelic revolution is Army Rangers. It's Navy SEALs like Marcus Luttrell, or fighter pilots or stuff like that. So maybe, if mom and pop walking down the street, quote, look up to veterans, even though you and I both think we're the village idiot, maybe there's something to it. If they, because you know as well as I do, man, veterans don't do anything else unless it's vouched for, right? I'm not going to listen to some dude wearing a drug rug with mala beads, who's a shambro. I'm going to listen to Chad, or I'm going to listen to Whiz, and if they vouch for it, this is what I'm going to do.
Well, and nail on the head. And I've always said it, and I know I get shit in this community sometimes for being a little bit brash or saying it like it is, but I think perfectly said, like yourself, I feel like Mental Joe is holding that space, that middle ground space for that lady or gal that's in Kansas or Oklahoma.
Correct.
And understands, well, these are drugs because the government said so.
Exactly.
And so that's where I feel like Mental Joe, I have to hold that space. That's why, I'm down 60 pounds. That's why I live my life a little bit differently, because I want to show people, like, if you use these with intention, if you put the reps in, your life is completely different. And I looked up, said, I really feel like I'm an average Joe. I had a taste of that soft community, right? But when I look at gentlemen like Marcus Luttrell or gentlemen like yourself, right? I mean, Top Gun graduate, Navy SEAL, you were the guys that I look to say, well, hey, I know the shit that they gone through is top tier, and I know their traumas are a lot heavier than my traumas. And so when I look to you guys, that's when I'm like, hey, if they can own their shit at the degree and level and train that they went through, guess what? Yeah. This average Joe can own his shit too.
Amen.
And so that's when I looked up to you guys that were, really, let's just call it tip of the spear type dudes, right? And I said, you know what? It's time for Chad to put down the ego, and it's time to put the sword back in the sheath and really try to understand this stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's the space I want to hold, is that average Joe space out there.
I love it, man. And you do a great job. The merch is just absolutely fantastic. It flies off the shelf. People reach out to me all the time on how to get all this stuff. And I think you're filling that niche spot, and it's just, and the creations you come up with are just beautiful, man. What, after the initial psilocybin dose, do you feel the need? Does the medicine ever call you again? Do you need a tune-up, or are you kind of a one and done guy? How do you look at the medicine now that you're kind of? We're always healing. There's always more layers, but do you? I always tell people, first thing you get briefed when you get on the airliner is what? If we lose pressurization, put the mask on yourself first, because you're not good to anybody else if you're passed out. So do you ever feel the need to put the mask on, or where are you at with all that?
Yeah, I'm wide open about it. Yeah, I feel like I've got to have a little bit of a reset about every 6 months. Yeah. And depending upon what's going on in life and what's happening, sure, I might be able to elongate that, right? And I really understand it from, okay, where am I at? Okay, all these stressors are happening. I haven't journaled in a while. Mm-hmm. I'm still going to the gym, but maybe my diet's dipped a little bit. So that helps with the mood being off as well. So I'm understanding all these different variables that I didn't understand before. So to the point, I would probably say every 6 months. And in fact, tomorrow I'm actually going and setting for a ketamine session, which I don't know how much I can say is a documentary that we're getting shot on ketamine. Awesome. And Amazon Prime has already bought the rights to it. So
that's great.
That's pretty freaking cool.
That's a big deal. Congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Again, leading with your truth and your heart, man. You be the change that you want to see in the world. And I love that you're doing that. I also love that you brought up that you have one of the biggest gifts of the medicine to me was pulling me outside of me and giving me situation awareness. Here's what I mean by that. Kind of like you just rattled off all these other stress, all the crap going on, old Whiz, so to speak. If I had some ice building up on my wings, man, I'd stall and I'd do some pretty destructive and stupid shit. New Whiz, quote unquote, after the medicine, I can step outside of that airplane and go, dude, you got ice on your wings. You're about to stall. You can fix this shit. So that's usually when I say, you know what? Time to go kind of like Ultraman, fly to the sun a little bit, go knock the rust off with a little bit of medicine. I mean, Marcus reaches out. I couldn't make it last year, but, our original 5 group, me, Marcus, Jared Taylor from Black Rifle, another team guy, and then Robert Gallery, All-American from Iowa, and a Raider for, I think, 6 to 8 years. We might do an annual knock the rust off with the IBO game.
Love it.
And there ain't no problem with that. Because it was funny, because after I did it initially and I did it again like a year later, I remember briefing that to some of my Top Gun Options members, and they're like, wow, you're doing it again? And it made me pause. I'm like, whoa, is that too much? And I'm like, it was a year, man. It's a year. There are people shoving pills down their throat every day. So when I answered a person's question, you're like, oh, I didn't mean like it was a short time frame. I just, so I'm glad you brought up the situational awareness thing, because I always, and maybe you get asked this question a lot too. I often get asked like, hey, is this one and done, or do you need to do it multiple times? And my answer is, it depends. It just depends. I've seen one and done, folks, and I've seen, hey, I do an annual 6 or 12 month knock the rust off. How about your experience in the medicine space? What do you see? A little bit of both too?
Yeah, I see a little bit of both for sure. I mean, same thing. Carrie and I are super transparent about it, just because, she needed to heal. And, one of the things that kind of called her out, and we kind of laugh about it, is when I was healing and I was really in a stable place, I kind of looked at her and said, when are you going to deal with your bullshit? And she was kind of like, F you, dude.
Excuse me?
Yeah. And so part of like Carrie and I's marriage contract now is we kind of disappear for a weekend every 6 to 7 months. And, we have our sister Molly with us, and we just reconnect in a different way where we see each other, and we don't abuse it, we don't get crazy with it, but we truly try to use this stuff in a form of how do we heal and how do we stay focused moving forward.
Absolutely fantastic. I after I got home, a lean, mean fighting machine, it was a little tough, at first with Susie, because first of all, she's like, who is, well, this is the guy I met in college type of thing. Like, where have you been for a couple decades?
Yeah.
But then it was, I'm like, let's go, get up. Life's great. Everything's, we're blessed. Let's go. And she's like, well, yay for you, man. So that's when she said, you know what, I think I'm going to go down to the mission within. And, so she went down with a couple Ranger wives and I think a Gold Star spouse. And they did heroic dose psilocybin and some toad. And when she got back from that, kind of like you guys, I mean, we've never been a better couple. I mean, we still, everybody's got their bullshit, but we see it from that different point of view, a healed point of view, and not ego and just raging, man. Knock on wood, with I think we're close to 75 grant recipients or folks that we've helped. Knock on wood, not a single person has come back and said that was a waste of time, or I'm worse, or to a man, to a woman, everybody has come back and said either that was the most transformative thing that's ever happened to me, or it saved and changed my life. As you know, I try and go on every retreat. There's been a couple of retreats, if I don't get a chance to go, it's like clockwork, man. I'll get a text that says, Whiz, I don't want to kill myself anymore. I mean, how can you even you can't put a price tag on that. It brings tears to my eyes right now to even like to say that, man, because I'm like, how can you? So this work that we're doing is just insane. So talk to us about, with the merch, you guys have your own nonprofit, and you guys are putting the ladder down as well. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so this coming up year, we're going to probably transition a little bit, where the apparel is going to be a for-profit, and then we'll just have the Mental Joe Foundation. And the overarching future goal for it is Mental Joe be in a place that we will be so profitable, we will be like a Wounded Warrior type of a thing, but on steroids, to where, for instance, someone comes to your retreat, right? Or you reach out and say, hey, Chad, like, we've got 4 people online, but they don't have the funding. Mental Joe, we want to be the stopgap. I want to be able to say, here's 20 grand, Whiz, go heal those 5 people.
Yeah, here's a retreat.
Yeah, and we want to use the apparel as a way to not only talk about this community and raise awareness and start conversations, but use the apparel as a medium to essentially fund the nonprofit.
Amen. Yep.
So as that money's coming in, now we can write checks. So there's a group here in Arizona called the 100 Club. And so they are essentially a massive advocacy group for first responders. And so they are actually putting first responders through a ketamine clinic here in the Phoenix Valley that we refer a lot of people to.
Oh, good.
But there's an upfront cost. There's $500, right, to that first responder. And so same thing, like, I want to be that stopgap. If that person can't afford the 500, let us write that check and let's get them into the help. Now, obviously, as well as I do, it's veterans, they like everything that's free. And sometimes if they don't come out of their own pocket, right, there's
they don't have any skin in it. Yeah.
Yep. There's a way of, I don't need to show up. I didn't pay for anything. So we still want to hold them accountable, but we want to be that stopgap for those folks. Like, personally, like, I don't ever see Mental Joe having camps everywhere. It's not where I want to sit. I think there's people that do that and they do it well.
Correct.
I want to be able to support those retreats, to the standpoint, I kind of call it like Tom's shoes. The CEO, he wrote $100 million check to psychedelic research.
Amen.
Now, when Mental Joe is at spot, I'd like to say, I donated $5 million to No Fallen Heroes. I donated $5 million to Heroic Hearts Project. I donated XXX, and allow you guys and you foundations to be the healers or hold that space for people to get healed. And don't worry that you got to go worry and we got to go have another gala that we got to plan to raise money.
Oh my God,
just go do the healing aspect.
Exactly. I think the merch is great too, because for our foundation, at least I have a fighter jet. I try and raise money by taking donors flying in. It is a tough environment. People always love merch. People always need merch. I mean, yep. Susie's email inbox was full like, hey, it's the fall, wear the hoodies type of thing. So I think the merch is great because it is such a, contrary to what the regime is telling us or the media is telling us, the economy isn't necessarily that great. And people, it's really tough even to come out of pocket to try and help heal our heroes, which breaks my heart. So many people want to try and support, but it's just a very tough economy, or at least that's what I'm seeing. So I think the merch is a great way to go. And it connects people to the experience, man. It's I went on a retreat and I got this t-shirt, man, or this hoodie, and it actually speaks to it. And if you saw the world famous Florida Panthers win the Stanley Cup, man, we were wearing our Mental Joe gear we were the second row behind the bench, man. So it was great seeing you post that video of us behind the bench in the Stanley Cup final, pointing to your gear on the national stage. I got a ton of interest on social media too, man. People would be like, hey, we see you. And that was awesome.
It was, for me, it was like a surreal kind of weird moment, right? Because the design that I've got on was a little bit different, what I presented to you. And then I think your terminology, you Reese-PC'd it up is kind of how you use.
Exactly.
And I love what you guys came up with, with the camo helmet and the psychedelic visor, and then your guys' little logo here. Yeah. And I was like, that's it, man. That's beautiful. And then you guys use it for Maverick Mind. But for me, for a guy that was getting ready to blow his brains out 4.5 years ago, to look at a TV screen, and I've got this design that now this Top Gun dude is rocking, and they're behind it was cool. Okay, man, like we're moving the goalposts.
We're there, man. Yeah. God is great, man. Those are all synchronicities. I think have you met Slider, Mark Keller, Tomcat?
I have not. No.
Yeah, you got to meet Slider, but I always steal or borrow his sentence. Because he had accidentally, he dropped his Tomcat dropped on what he was told was a bad guy house, but it ended up being 3 generations of innocent Iraqis, 12 people, man. It was international news, and that guy he was done. Benzos, drugs, suicide attempts, and man, that guy is completely done a 180. And his sentence is, Whiz, I'm thankful for my suffering. If you can get to a point in your life where you actually can sit there in a state of gratitude and say, you know what? I'm thankful for that suffering. So all of your stuff, it got you to that pinnacle moment of, holy shit, that's my gear and the Stanley Cup series behind the bench. So you can look back and say, if any of that stuff had changed, I might not be in this position. So finding gratitude in suffering is one of the things that I've incorporated in my integration. And it's tough to do all the time, but clearly if you can find some silver lining in badness, you're winning. It's like if you go and hit the gym on your worst day, you're just feeling like shit or you're tired, but you still go, you're making money, right? So
exactly.
I'm thankful for my suffering. What do you think about that?
I love it. Yeah. And I do too. And again, I always I say the 4.5 years ago, because I feel that's kind of when the new book of Chad 2.0 started. Yeah. Right. And I can look at that, and people that follow us on social media, you can see fat Chad in a little coat. It's the first post I have. I'm close to 300 pounds, and again, that was the starting block. Now I can see where I'm at, because I was trying to hold myself to the standard of the old Army Ranger Chad. Like, hey, you weren't there, you were there. No, dude, that was 20 years ago. Yeah. Your back, your knees, like you're older now. So now it's a slow progress. Mm-hmm. Like you said, like there's days like this has been kind of a rough week for me, and just really busy with Mental Joe stuff. We just got back with a big military conference in Vegas, which I think would be a good spot for you guys maybe to come hang out next year.
Yeah, the MIC, right?
But it's called the MCon.
Yeah, MCon. Yeah,
okay. It was fantastic. And the people, Whiz, that came up to the booth, and the bridge is starting to be there. Oh, people are open to it. We had couples that were like, hey, we had a couple of people tell us about your booth. We want to talk to you and Carrie about your story because we're really interested, but we're kind of scared of the drug term. So we're not sure how to navigate this. Mm-hmm. And so that's where these stories are starting to turn around, and me looking back and going, okay, that starting block was 4.5 years, and I can see my progress.
Yeah.
And when I have those moments of lows and going, okay, dude, this is the season.
Correct.
Sit with it, feel it, understand it. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're going to get through this. And then that uptick will start coming back around.
Correct.
So like you said before, being able to have that awareness and understand like, hey, this is a shit couple days. It's okay. Let's set in
pass. Correct.
And then let's see, as opposed to I'm a loser, maybe I'll just off myself and I'm done with this. I can't handle it. Now I feel I'm having those tools and that groundwork to be able to think of those.
It's that downward spiral, man, that the old us would put ourselves into, and it's very hard to pull out of that nosedive. Now we can say, all right, man, this is impermanent. The biggest thing that I took away from the medicine, I could just sum up into a couple words. Everything's okay. Yeah. Even when everything's horrible, it's okay. Susie got back from her retreat. I mean, episode 33, you got to listen to. Hers was, it's fine. Everything's fine. And that was always her catchphrase anyway. I mean, our house could be on fire and all sorts of crazy. Susie is it's fine. Before she did the medicine, that was her catchphrase. But after she did it, she actually came home. She's like, it's the truth. Everything's fine. Even in the worst moments, even in the best moments, everything's fine. And you're protected and you're blessed. And I love the fact that, because mine was, when did I do the medicine? May of 21. So I'm a little behind you. So I'm on a 3.5 year time frame or something like that. Okay. It was like right after COVID, the whole COVID thing. So after that is when, Whiz 2.0, to use your term, started appearing. But I'm glad you said that, because I can look at old pictures of me, especially when I was in the drugs or the alcohol or just separated from God, my bride, my children, and just could not have been in a worse place. But I can actually look now and have some grace and some compassion for that, for who I was and human being. Old me, I'd be ripping myself to shreds right now, which doesn't do anything, right? So now, and I love that my guide, when I did the medicine at the Mission Within, she's like, hey, bring pictures of, you as a kid and other pictures that are special to you. And I remember looking at that, in the medicine, looking at that little blonde-haired, towhead kid from South Jersey, and just having so much grace and compassion for that journey that I've been on, right? The highs and the lows. And to your point, we're here. And we are helping to save and change lives. Talk us through how we can buy your stuff. And like I said, folks, if you're new to our Max Afterburner podcast, go back and watch some of the videos, man, because 90% of my podcast apparel is Mental Joe stuff. So how do they get all this Gucci merch? And I don't know if I can say this or not, but if you got a really cool idea, can they approach you with it like we did? Because you do up some pretty cool designs when people come to you, right?
100%. Yeah, we've had a couple people that we've collaborated on with some stuff, and even some friends that are like, hey man, I'd really like to see this on a hoodie, but I don't have a graphic design. I don't know how all this works. I'm like, just send me the design. We'll clean it up. I'll get it out there. So yeah, I'm open to anybody that wants to collaborate. I'm open to, other foundations that maybe want to create merch for them. And we actually have a collaboration tab and a little form that we've built out. Because again, I've learned through this process, and boy, have I screwed some of these things up, and that eats at me. It really eats at me, because I want to be able to deliver really good apparel in a timely manner that's cost effective for the foundations. But same thing, I'm human. What people don't realize, it's me.
Yeah.
It's everything behind the scenes.
That's Mental Joe right there.
That's it. It's me or Carrie, right? So, I hold myself to that standard. So when I screw up, it really does eat at me. It really beats me up. But, again, they can reach out. It's, we got a contact form, but it's super easy. We're mentaljoe.com, on the website. And then we're on all the socials, and we're learning to tick that up. And that's at Mental Joe Apparel. Our biggest lead right now is Instagram, but we got a little gal that's kind of helping us with social, because I was going down some rabbit holes. And I was just throwing spaghetti, and I didn't understand algorithms. And I was like, this sucks. I hate this part of it. So, but mentaljoe.com.
Awesome. I love it. I got the same thing. We have our social media manager. I'm a complete idiot. I'm a caveman staring at a wristwatch when it comes to social media. So it's better. I'm smart enough to hire people that are smarter than me. So Brianna, nice job with everything that you're doing. But bro, I love what you're doing. Let's get Carrie on. Let's have her do a podcast with Susie. I think that would
absolutely.
That would be fantastic.
I think the two women chatting it up I think that'd be beautiful.
Yeah. Because it's interesting because have you in your medicine work, do you do mixed retreats or do you do same sex? Because it's interesting because I've seen both. Because I was about to say, there's a different energy when it's an all women's retreat and all men and a mixed. What's your take on some of that?
I think I'm probably on that same bus with you. I think I'm open to it. I think there needs to be, like, if you're going to have couples come in, I think you need to have that couples retreat, because then the men can kind of talk to each other. The women can kind of talk, and then collectively you can say, well, hey, dipshit did this to me over here. Yep, I get it. It happened to me too. But how did you clean that garbage out to where now you guys are connected in a different way? Yeah. And then same thing, I think men retreats are great because there's stuff men can talk about that we don't have to still maybe be a little embarrassed that we've got some women listening, and same thing, the women can connect on that. So I think set and setting is huge. I think you can mix it up, but same thing. I think it's down to who's holding that medicine space. Amen. And are they holding it according to the folks that are there?
Yeah, I agree. And I bring that up because we're going to be we're flowing out our flight schedule for the rest of the year, and then obviously for 2025, we're gonna start having small female retreats out there in Oregon. I hope Massachusetts on Monday, Tuesday, whenever it is, election Monday, passes. I think it's their Measure 4 or whatever it's called, Proposition 4. They'd be the third state for this medicine. Ron DeSantis, I know you're a regular watcher and listener of my podcast. Where are you, bro? The state of Florida.
Ron, let's go.
You're a Navy veteran. You're a fellow Navy guy. You need to be, because what is it? Texas, California, and then I think Florida, the third populous state with veterans. I'm like, we should be. Thank God for Oregon and Colorado, because man, I'll tell you, whenever I was getting on a jet to fly to Costa Rica or Mexico, I'm like, what am I doing, man? I'm going to heal heroes who incurred trauma serving this country, and I'm taking them to another country. It just made me physically ill. So thank you, voters in Oregon and Colorado. But yeah, man, Massachusetts, hopefully. I thought Arizona was close. What happened? It got to the governor and failed, or what was Arizona?
So there was some language that was on the backside, because I was kind of, Sue Sisley. Yeah. So Sue was kind of in charge of that bill. And so it got passed. It was a $5 million bill, if you will, that got passed to study the actual mushroom itself, as opposed to just the molecule. So it's the first study in the world that's what they're throwing out there, that's actually studying the mushroom. Like, here's your 2 grams, put on your eye mask, let's go. As opposed to all the other ways that it's taken. But yeah, it did get passed. But same thing. I mean, like, cannabis is fully legal here and recreational, but I think Arizona is probably pretty close as well once this study kind of goes through. And same thing, I think Arizona is one of the top 5 or 6 communities with veterans out here as well. Yeah,
we just actually had a bunch, I think 5 women go through a retreat out in Sedona.
Beautiful.
With Iboga. The results I've heard are just absolutely fantastic. So it's a beautiful state, man. And Sedona, nice spiritual and earthy type of thing. So we're getting there. We really need to heal our heroes at home. I love my brother, Justin Lepre, down there in Texas, down in Austin, doing some great work with illuminating heroes, I believe it is. So we're getting there. But my brother, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast. When am I going to see you guys again? I miss you guys. You guys ever come down to South Florida? I gotta bend you around in the airplane, man.
Yeah, I know. I've got to come down there and we got to do it, but I want to pay for my ride. It's like I will make that check. It will be feasible. But yeah, it's same thing with kids. Everything's 100 miles an hour. But Carrie and I are slowly trying to build that calendar out because we know we got to be out there. We got to break the bread. We got to shake people's hands. Like that's how we grow. And she saw it and I saw it when we went to MCon, right? Of like, hey, being in front of the people, that's where this starts to really spread like the mycelium. But there is talk that maybe we might be out in Florida next year. So we'll see what happens.
Dude, giddy up, man. Like I tell everybody, make sure you eat a banana for breakfast because it tastes the same coming up as it did going down.
I'll be empty that morning.
All right, folks. Chad, God bless you, my brother. Love you. Love your bride. Go check out Mental Joe. His merch is absolutely fantastic. It was worn in the Stanley Cup finals with the world famous world champions Florida Panthers. So, folks, I appreciate it, Chad. Love you, man.
Thank you.
Everybody else, have a great rest of your day. Happy hunting. Make sure you're hedged. Fights on, namaste, and basi, which means truth. Whiz and Chad from Mental Joe, we're out.